All right. So, why don't you introduce yourself? Because you had messaged me on Patreon, which, by the way, I
I
appreciate.
did.
I appreciate the sub, of course, I do. Why don't
And
you introduce yourself to the chat though? Because they're all asking like who you are and whatnot. Yeah.
I'm kind of like them. I am a viewer. My name is Latchkey Gothboy, and a lot of the community people probably know who I am
Mhm.
in some places. Just not all of them, but I also follow other creators like Willie Mack and people who just have content that is pretty incisive, with a little humor on the sideline.
Are you a tipster fan? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, Tipster is I'm actually a drama fanatic,
Oh,
and he's
okay.
the character. I actually see these YouTubers like characters in a way. Uh,
Okay. He's definitely a character. Are you
yes, he is.
are you active on Twitter?
I not so much. Most
Okay.
of the stuff I put on is like retweets. Uh, I do think that a lot of Twitter drama is AIDS, but yet
No.
entertaining
It's
despite that.
it's true. I try to keep myself out of the Twitter drama. I try not to do any serious takes on there because it's just like an
Yeah,
annoying cesspool. Yeah.
and that's telenovela is pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's like the real life
Well,
drama. It's like a real life
exactly.
drama situation.
Yeah.
So what did you want to come on and chat about today? Because if you do, you want me to like read the Patreon you sent me or anything, or
No, I think well, you could.
it's up to you.
Basically, actually, it's more. Yeah, actually, not the Patreon because that was a little more information. But
Did you want me to read it or?
oh no,
Oh,
I wanted to come. I wanted to come to talk to you because you wanted to talk to somebody that was going through some trans experiences that are kind of not necessarily one side or the other.
mhm. Yeah. I don't know how much information because I just don't want to say anything that you want to keep. That's why I'm asking you to if you want to introduce yourself and give yourself a little backstory. I don't want to say anything that you
Okay.
don't want to like reveal. Um, that's why. But is I guess is everything for the most part because you had mentioned that you're a 40-year-old trans man, right? Trans dude.
Correct.
Okay, I just don't know what I can. I didn't want to. I didn't want to
Yeah.
overstep.
So
Is that okay?
absolutely.
Okay, I didn't know if, how much you wanted me to. Do. Yeah, so that's what you said. You have like a background, and so yeah, I was like curious in what your experiences and whatnot, and like what did you want to talk to me about because you had reached out to me, and of course I'm always interested in talking to people about different experiences. Um,
With my experience compared to other individuals, I came out when I was in my 40s.
mm,
So I lived a part of my life as a woman. Uh, for for whatever reason, um, I didn't know anything about trans stuff until like after I actually came to Seattle. The possibilities never occurred to me. I was very much raised in a very patriotic minded society, Catholic. I still hold some of those values, but I also do realize that some of those values are kind of bullshit when it comes to worth. But it doesn't mean that I don't come with my own struggles, understanding binary, non binary, because I feel very much in the male spectrum.
mhm.
This is
You
why I understand
you got a
people
little
like,
lower. That's all.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, this is why I understand people like I guess Trampa is what I call it, Buck Angel.
Okay.
He has a certain view, but I think it's less compassionate to young folk.
Yeah. So I was gonna actually the first thing I wanted to ask you is so you said how like mind if I ask how old you are now?
I'm 47,
Okay.
but
So
actually 46. I'm gonna be 47.
okay. Well, happy birthday soon then.
Yes.
When did you? So how many years has it been since you've I guess identified as trans? I don't know how or identifies as a
I
guy.
think,
I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
yeah, no, you can call me he, and I won't get mad because I don't sound like a he yet.
Oh no, I wasn't gonna say you're not a boy. I just don't know. I
Yeah,
don't want to say is coming out as trans the wrong thing to say, or I say like, oh, you're a guy now. How long
no,
has it been since you've been a guy? Is the
that's
question is.
actually the thing.
Yeah.
I would say trans for a while because I'm still going through the process. And that's where I start understanding the they part.
Hmm.
Because when you go through a transition from, where you're at, and in some cases, like I said, in my case, I can't transition because of medical reasons. I'm an
Okay.
old person. I have all these other things. You want testosterone in me and make me angry all the
Hmm.
time. It's not good for society. I don't want that. But it's not for everybody because as an older person, I have different needs, like prolonging my life.
Right.
Young
Yeah, that
people,
makes
I
sense.
think it is important for them to identify and try to figure it out along the way. And this
Um.
is why,
Oh, go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, and this is why I get sometimes people do detransition because they might not be going through one side of it,
Hmm.
or and I do believe society does encourage people a lot more, especially because I do remember that. I mean, Gen X, we're kind of like more aggressive Gen Zs if you think about it.
I actually okay. So you had mentioned that you had transitioned recently, right? So like within the
Mhm.
last few years,
I
and
would
you
say 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah, I
And
did.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think a final thing that I did. I think I went through surgery basically in 2020,
Hmm.
the year of suck,
Okay.
where everybody went crazy, and it was a very challenge, but made it through.
That's good. Yeah, that's a rough time for a lot of people. I was still working, so I didn't feel it as much, because I was still out
Hmm.
and about. A lot of people were stuck at home. Um,
Yeah.
so you said you weren't like really, you didn't really know about even, I guess the I guess the option of identifying as trans. You had mentioned that, right, or as a male.
Hmm.
Um, and you did you what did you consider yourself at that point? Did you consider yourself like a tom girl kind of a thing, or how did you identify?
I think the joke growing up was that I was a gay man trapped in a woman's body.
Okay.
So, uh, and for the longest time, that was it. And then this trans situation happened in all of our country, and then I started thinking about it, and that's when I decided to revert my mental health. And I have like psychiatrists that I do talk to,
Hmm.
and for a long time, I have always felt resentful for being a woman. And as much as I was growing up in the South where patriotic was a big thing, my issues were more with feminine energies. Like just, men can physically hurt you, but sometimes women, if they get mean or nasty,
Hmm.
will go for the soul in some ways. And when they are basically, raising you, it just kind of sticks with you. So a lot of my anti feminine uh, was probably used to discredit me as a woman, which I never was. So it really never hurt me, but it was a reminder every time. And so, like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have a baby? That wasn't going to work out for me.
Mm.
And that gets really annoying. So I actually, for a long time, believed that propaganda until I started to get along with others and just started to talk to other people around me and just it is hard because everyone has a very drastic viewpoint about trans rights.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's too left, too right, and it's never in between where you can actually talk to somebody about it. The silencing of cis men, for example, is not proactive to the whole thing.
So what do you
It's
mean
like
the
sometimes
oh what do you mean the silencing of cis men? I'm just curious what you mean by that.
I think that with Twitter, I do get a lot of negativity just because I try to follow the communities and stuff.
Hmm.
But I do see a lot of that type of virtue signal that just because you do not fall into X category doesn't mean you don't have a say in it. We don't know. You and mama might have a child in the future where you do need to know. And
Hmm.
I personally, as somebody that has never had a male role model in my entire life, I actually do care about what cis men have to say. What
Okay.
and even the straight ones, because straight and gays, because in my situation, I'm a gay man trapped in a woman's body.
Hmm.
That's not necessarily something that is social and acceptable with the gay guys, unless there's bisexual men and stuff like
I
that.
see what you're
But
saying. Okay.
yes, and then you also have to keep in mind, I've dated guys that try to get along with cis women,
Hmm.
but it is different.
Okay. All right. So one question I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned like you didn't know, and like until like you the opportunity, or until I guess transness was something that's more mainstream. You didn't really even know about the existence of the ability to identify as a male. Were you happier once you were able to like identify as a male? That's a weird
Uh,
question.
oh yeah,
Because
actually, what because I also, when I had my top surgery, that like helped me a great deal.
okay, because I want
Uh,
like what did it? Because I don't want to ask like a leading question. Because
sure, sure.
a lot of people. This is one thing, and this is like a Buck Angel perspective, and this is like it was
Yes.
interesting that he had mentioned something along the lines of back then there wasn't the availability to transition, so people I guess kind of there was I guess you saw more like masculine women and feminine men, like I guess your tomboys and your femme girls or
Mm,
whatever they want to call it. Sorry if I'm using bad language. But now
yeah.
that there's the availability, it seems like his argument might be that some people might just be like a tom girl and that they don't need to transition. But then a lot of people
Yeah.
push back and say like, well, maybe that's just as far as people feel like they can go. So that's what I was more asking is like now that once you found the availability of it, did that like make you happier? And I don't mean to ask leading questions, but like that's what I'm trying to explore.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And what did it? I know it's weird. What did it feel like? Like, what did it feel like once you were able, like, once you like, I guess, found out about this?
Well, the one thing that I think I had to do was make sure that it wasn't me being a tomboy, because I also thought it was just that. Because I didn't like to, I never wanted to marry. The
Hmm.
idea of getting pregnant was horrifying.
I can
So
understand that.
and I'm going to say this, but my mom was kind of a Karen, and I wanted to be sure there wasn't any personal mommy issues that wasn't making me go, everybody that's a female is a demon. That's not what I wanted. So
Interesting.
once I realized no, it's not that. Uh, I started to play with the idea. Well, if that's not it, let's explore this trans transition and what can I do. And I actually took years to make the final decisions. And so far, it has not. It's been better. I mean, I'm been happier than I have ever been, and it does help that I'm no longer in the South.
Hmm.
I love the South. Don't get me wrong, and I only left because it was too damn hot.
I don't
Like
blame you for
weather.
that.
Yeah. No,
I
I'm
don't blame
sorry.
you for
No.
that. No, go ahead. That's funny. No, keep going.
But that's how I feel. That's why I was able to see Buck Angel's thought. But people that have kind of the middle ground, like the queer, I get the queer portion, and okay, the term queer is a
Mhm.
big problem for me because back in the day, in the '80s, that was supposed to be an insult,
Yeah, now it's like there's a
and now it's an
reclamation of the
acceptable
word,
thing.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't even know what it really means now because I think it's supposed to. I thought it was just like an all-encompassing term.
Yeah,
But
and
I,
there's more to it, I think.
well, what's your
But
experience with the word? If you don't mind
queer?
talking about that, yeah.
Well, definitely more of a weirdness than, say, sexuality. I think people use it like that, and that's how I was pretty much identified as. But you can tell when a person says a term to you, you know where their intentions are. Like
Hmm.
when your friends call you a fag or something, there's
Right.
no. But but sometimes you can tell, and that has changed a great deal. Even some of my younger cousins had to stop me before I had a fight with somebody because they called me that, and I'm like, no, 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 it's positive, it's okay.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like my wife and I call each other bitch sometimes, like for fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have
It's like
that.
the way
Yeah,
that it's like your inner circle, the way that you talk to each other. Like some things are okay, but then when you get into you start expanding that circle out, it can be misrepresented. Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. Um, all right. So you mentioned before, maybe I misinterpreted this, but you had
Hmm.
mentioned about like the they identification, and it seemed
Hmm.
like you may have been saying that identifying as or using they them pronouns was almost like associated with an in between transition. So is that what did I pick that up correctly, or did I just speculate too much? Like, what's your opinion on like non-binary people? I guess.
I think non-binary is an individual's experience. I feel that some people just don't want to be sexualized. Others are actually going through their transition, and in I sometimes do the they because that's what little kids call me.
Hmm.
I'd never even have to say anything. I think that younger people are just more aware of their surroundings, which is why sometimes it gets infuriating when they use trans as a groomer term,
Yeah.
as like beyond not true. So, but children are educating me, and so are young teenagers, people that are going through this in their own way.
Hmm.
So that's some of the things that I experience as far as that goes.
Are those like in online spaces where you're like talking to or you're seeing like younger people express themselves and like you're learning about
Online, but I do get better experiences when I go out and touch grass.
do you do like some kind of like a local meeting or like a Boy Scout meeting? I don't
No,
know. Like that's what
nah,
I
nah.
I didn't know.
Oh, hell no. I went out of my way not to be a parent, and I don't intend to start now. So,
Okay.
uh,
Do you like local meetings though for like having conversations with like I guess LGBTQ people? Are you part of like some kind of like a
no,
local organization? Oh, okay.
no, no.
Interesting.
I just work at home like everybody did in 2020, and just have a lot of time on my hands to watch you guys.
Is that when you were able to move like once you started working from home?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome because that's
So,
like the most freeing thing is to be able to like work from home and not have to go in.
yes.
Yeah, it's so nice.
And that
Really.
actually helped a lot.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty cool.
Well, how so? Yeah, I guess that's another question I have. So when you were working, how did
Mhm.
that? I guess like I don't know what was like the because you said you worked in the South, right? What did you do for work, if you don't mind me asking? You could say that you
Oh,
don't feel
I didn't work
comfortable.
in the South. I'm sorry. I moved
Oh.
a house. Yeah. I s the transition at work
Hmm.
was kind of, challenging because they've known me so long, and, it was a weirdness. I think, I myself have my own hangups on those things.
Hmm. Okay. This is a weird question, but when
Sure.
you were before you like your transition and when you were working, did you fit in more in like male spaces versus like women's spaces at work? Like work, that workspaces tend to categorize themselves a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
How did
I I was more, closer to male spaces. In fact, I wasn't very fond of female spaces because, unfortunately, I just, felt, there was a lot more underhanded competition.
interesting?
And this is, like, p some past jobs, but, yeah, I do get along with guys, more so, and, probably because I'm a smartass.
Yeah,
Just be
right.
Yeah.
Were you accepted in those male spaces, like fine, or like socially, like without like any?
Yeah, actually, it was for those that knew me much more than I knew myself, they kinda were acting like, "Oh, we already knew. Whatever." You know?
Yeah, like you're one of the guys, basically, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, because it's interesting because with the conversation around trans people a lot now, we're having a lot of conversations about really like where do trans people fit into, I guess, like, or trans men fit into male spaces and trans women fit into women's spaces and whatnot. And we centralize that conversation a lot around bathrooms, right? Where do people take their wieners out? But nobody
Yeah.
really talks about like the social circles where, like, even now, more masculine women and trans men, of course, fit into male spaces. It's really about like an attitude to some extent, and like the same thing where like gay men tend to be in like women's space. Like my wife's best friend is a gay guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like we've already been doing, I guess you'd say, some areas of like, I guess, like some kind of like gender incongruence or something where people like more it's more like masculine people fit into male spaces and then feminine people fit into female spaces for the most part. And it's interesting that we're focusing on bathrooms. We don't focus on social circles where like these things are already like acceptable. So yeah.
Even my personal circles with my family, a lot of the younger ones have been more accepting than, let's say the boomers. Who I think I said something about dead naming, that I don't believe in it for my own personal reasons,
Mhm.
because I feel that my elders who are in their 90s and their 80s, I don't want to take away the memories they've had in their entire life of me, and expect them to understand something, especially if they're going through dementia or something that's
Mhm.
Alzheimer's. That's too much. It's not going to happen. So I want them to have that memory with them.
That's interesting. Yeah, because a lot of people get offended when you dead name, which I
Yeah,
generally understand. But
I do.
I'm assuming, did you do you have a different name now?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say it, but
You don't have to
I
say it. Yeah, no.
I do go by Murray,
Okay.
but I do have a different name. I'm sure that most of the people that have been around me still say it, and even I misgender myself on a bit.
I guess you're just used to it, right?
It's something to get used to, and I hate to. I stay kind of with a simple clothes, just because not to give much of a genderization. So that's where I fall into. I'm getting in a they part, at least until I'm able to use, because my body is still feminine. It's
Mhm.
just that everything else is not.
Right, like your mind is more masculine. It sounds like it.
Yeah,
Um,
very bitter, very bitter.
yeah.
So, but it's okay. But I don't mind contributing to this, just because sometimes it is important to get a different viewpoint.
It makes sense.
And
I it's very interesting because not a lot of people like to come on and like share their experience. They feel like a little self conscious and whatnot. So it's always nice to talk.
yeah,
So the dead naming, how do you feel about other people, uh, expressing their frustrations about it? Because I can understand it. Like when a young person's like, "I don't dead name me," kind of a thing. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think people are being too sensitive, or do you think that um, there's like a
I
nuance
think
there?
there are a few that may take it a little bit too far, but I can't tell if it's for TikTok views or not.
Oh
But
yeah, true.
do, I do think that people. I understand why young people will get upset about it, but I think that it's also needing to be patient, that people need to learn, or people just, you need to. I think I said something like, everybody has their time of learning these experiences, and even I have some family that still don't do the he. But after a while, when everybody else is on board, they eventually just go by it. Like,
Okay.
but the sensitivity is usually a case by case basis, I'm afraid.
Yeah, people are probably less sensitive in real life, but on TikTok, there's a lot of
Like,
performance
I
going
I
on.
expect all social media to have at least 20% extra than normal life. That's my philosophy. That's how I make it through.
Yeah, that makes sense. People on social media, a lot of people are very terminally online now, so it becomes
Yes.
very unfortunate.
I'm as guilty as anyone. Actually, I've been terminally online since the 90s.
Oh,
So
see, there you go.
yeah,
Oh.
Zen Neil, I understand.
See, the king of online, terminally online.
Yes, yes.
Um. Okay, so this is gonna be, I guess, a weird question because you said that,
Mm,
like you said before, it's probably not gonna be that weird. I don't know why I'm qualifying like that, but you had
mhm,
mentioned that like once you learned about like trans men and women that you felt more comfortable and that felt really right. But there was still
mhm.
an underlying feeling I'm going to assume that you had for like a significant amount of your life. So when did you, I guess, start feeling that underlying feeling that you were a man trapped in a woman's body? Was that at a very young age?
Felt like that since college. In
Okay.
fact, that was the joke. Back in the day, there's this term, and I don't actually know how they use it now.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with fag hag?
I I am familiar with that term.
I
Yeah.
was one of those. I was a gay man's accessory. Basically, it's a bestie on the arm.
Yeah, I have. I guess you could kind of consider my wife that because she has like a bunch of gay best friends and
Yes,
stuff. So yeah. I'm
I love
familiar
your
with it.
wife.
Yeah, yeah, she's fun. Yeah, I guess
Yes,
she just gets along with men more than women.
definitely.
Okay, so you felt this way in college. So like when you were growing up, you didn't feel like any underlying way. It was something that manifested itself in college.
It did, and unfortunately, at one point, I did kind of break down and go back to Texas because I went to college in a different state.
Mhm.
And that's when I went into my worst, deepest depression. And 4
When you went
years of
back.
that, yeah, when I went back to Texas, because then it was kind of going back into the crater again of doubt.
Oh,
And until
interesting.
I left to go to Seattle, and that was a long time ago. It was like in the I've been here for enough to be a citizen now. That's when things started changing, and it was a slow thing to happen. But eventually, even though it was decades, it happened. And it took a lot of soul searching, making sure that it wasn't my personal bullshit that was making me want to be part of something that was just, because there are times where I do feel that I kind of fall into a trap of groupness.
Yeah, I think a
And
lot of people do
yeah,
that in general. That's something that everybody does. You want to be kind of associated with something, and you want to be. Everybody does
exactly.
it. Even these little nerds online that pretend that they don't do that. They have all their fucking video game nerds. They want to feel close to like some kind of a group and some association with something in some capacity. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Correct, and so I try to keep that a little bit, to the side because now I know what my own, faults are, and
So
I can get a little pissy about things, you know?
so do you think that there is an in-group factor to a lot of people, or yeah, factor for people that may identify as trans?
Yes, I think it is very comforting to be part of a community. What makes it frustrating sometimes is when people start to gatekeep it.
Mm. In what ways do you feel that are the most frustrating with that?
It's usually more, personalized, groups. I don't wanna get it generalized because then we're in a different fury, but there's always that one Karen in every tiny group that will probably say things that may be invalidating, because they're struggling, and,
Mhm.
when you struggle, you do a lot of crazy things that you don't mean to do, and sometimes they're crazy things you can't take back.
So you're saying that Karens are coping? Is that what you're saying?
They're coping, and sometimes they know how to enrage, kind of.
Interesting, interesting. And
It's a philosophy.
so the reason I ask you that is I wanted to know is like what
Mhm.
your opinions are on like younger people transitioning. Like I guess people under the age of 18, how you feel about that, how the potential I guess environment or atmosphere or community could have like an impact on that. Really just like your general feelings on young people transitioning in some capacity.
I almost feel that that is, up to the families,
Mhm.
but it also has more to do than just their transition. I mentioned reached I didn't reach out to her, but I defended a lady who said that she didn't want to have her kid transition until they were 18.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And I think that and then she said, after he's 18, then, he could do whatever he wants, and that's cool.
Mhm.
But then people started attacking her, and saying something like, she was the worst mom in the world. And I started thinking, hey, we don't know what community this mom's from. And a lot of it could be protecting them. And the decisions that she makes may be, there might be other factors nobody else knows about it. But in general, social media never takes in count into that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's loud noise and white noise.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
but it made me think about it. Like there are reasons for people's decisions.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I still don't know how I feel about young people transitioning personally.
Personally, I don't think they should take the drug. I personally, when I first heard about it, I was like, "Oh my god, I would have rocked that drug. I've rocked all the drugs in college." But
You're talking
then
about puberty blockers, or you're talking about,
yes,
and like
yes.
I
Oh my
guess,
gosh.
and I guess like
It,
transitioning hormones if it comes to that as well, to
yes.
simulate it or go through like I guess like a male puberty or whatever you'd want to go through. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted
No,
to.
no. But a child's body is still growing, and but I also know that doctors will probably be able to monitor those things.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I'm like I said, I don't want to be anybody's mom or dad. I am here, I do understand both sides. I personally feel that I'd have waited because a lot of things about transition, a friend once pointed out, could affect if they stop something. You stop puberty blockers, or you start puberty blockers, something else might be effective. I had to consider it because of my mental health.
Hmm.
It's still other things that you need to take into account. And
Yeah, I think it gets difficult for kids to take those into account. I think is one of the arguments. Like, you could potentially become permanently infertile. I think,
yeah.
you
Oh
know,
God, yeah.
and it's like one of those things like it can be difficult for a kid to make that decision. But then on the other hand, that kid might have like a massively increased suicidality if they don't transition. And it's one of those things like you're saying. I think it is like a case by case basis. There's so many factors, because I wouldn't want if my kid was is like 4 years old and they're maybe they were born my son and they're like, oh, I'm a girl, and they consistently say that for years, and all of a sudden like what am I? And then they start going through puberty and they hate themselves and when they want to kill themselves. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to let my kid kill themselves. Of course, I'm going to take them to a therapist, and they need a transition. I'm going to want them to.
Right.
It's just such a hard decision that I think it's so hard because nobody's going to do it perfectly. No one's going to always get it right. It would be nice to really have like a medical infrastructure to do the right thing here. And would you have transitioned if you knew back in the day, like if you were like before you hit puberty, or would you have transitioned if this?
I would have probably wanted to, but I know that in my past, we were very poor, so that wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
And I was already a tomboy then, so there was no going away. Like I remember when I was a baby, like just ruining anything that had a skirt or ruffles. I would like rub my ass on some, uh,
Really? So you
yeah,
would?
rub my ass on a branch and run so the ruffles can come out.
So even as like a kid, like a baby, you
I
hated the concept of like femininity without even like
Yeah,
knowing about. Wow,
yeah.
that's
So I
interesting.
But I also felt that it was because I was surrounded by my uncles and, when I was younger, and then when I was, and then, it was just women all over everywhere. So, yeah, they didn't like that.
Interesting. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's so interesting because like a lot of young people, like obviously when you're 4 or 5 or 6, you don't really understand the concept of masculinity or femininity. But then
Mhm.
there still seems to be people or kids that like still don't they express that they don't identify with whatever traits they're supposed to inherit, right? Like so a young girl may not like the femininity, or a young boy might like femininity, but it's like weird that they understand it enough to gravitate in one way. Like they say, from my understanding, like a lot of young gay men or gay boys, obviously young gay boys, like they kind of the stereotype is that their mothers baby them too much and they become gay. But then
Yeah.
now it's like, oh well, they are gay, and so like they tend to gravitate towards more feminine things, and that's just like something inherent when they're a kid. Like they just like doing that. And even though
Yes.
a lot of these things are social constructs, I guess there absolutely must be some kind of underlying um you know demonstration of what femininity or masculinity is, which is just so interesting to me.
Yeah. And I think that for the most part, it was the comfort. Girls had to deal with ruffles and things, and boys just had shorts. So
Mm. Oh,
it also
okay.
was that.
Yeah, I guess I would. That would be really uncomfortable for me too, wearing a bunch of frilly bullshit, especially when it's hot out and you got to wear like a dress or some bullshit, you know. Um. So, and you can tell me if this question is a little too much. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like your dating experience, because you mentioned before you're obviously you're a man, but you are, you express a little bit like, if more femininely, and I wonder what like the struggle with that is, because like you were saying that it can be tough to date gay men. um and then I kind of want to ask you about that, like what's your experience with dating, if you don't mind it, and potentially even, quote unquote
Rare,
chasers,
actually.
what is that?
It's very rare, to be honest. There have been, like, maybe I can name in one hand how many dates I've had,
Hmm.
because it's never been comfortable. Like I said, for me, it's always been, as a woman, they were focused more so on feminine features that I had, and at the time, they were fine, but it was
Hmm.
always something like you make out, and then, they're focused on boobs, for example,
Hmm.
and you're just kinda there going, "Oh." There's a movie called Emma, But I'm a Cheerleader, and there's a scene where she's obviously gay, and then he kisses her, and it looks like she's getting drowned by this man's mouth,
Hmm.
and she's just standing there with her eyes open, waiting for it to be over. Sometimes it was like that.
Oh, wow, interesting.
So I didn't date because I also didn't want to make men feel like it was their problem, because it usually wasn't.
Hmm.
It was
Right,
just
yeah.
something that I went to, so that was something that I had to go through.
Interesting. What do gay guys go for then? I know this is just a random thought, because you said that they would go for your breasts, but like a dude, like I
Oh,
guess if
no,
a
no. These guys weren't gay. These guys were
oh
straight men, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
well that's what
alone
I
at
mean. They
the
would go
time.
for
Yeah.
boobs, and then I'm wondering like, what do gay guy? I guess gay guys don't touch
I
nipples or
haven't
anything.
dated a gay guy, to be honest
That
with
makes
you.
sense. I gotta ask a gay guy.
Actually,
I guess
that's
like
not true. I did date my best friend in junior high, and we had a great prom, but that was it. No, no.
see. I wonder what they go. I guess they go right for the penis or something, right for the genitals. They don't go
They
for the
love hot
boobs.
guys. Gay
Yeah,
men
yeah,
love
yeah,
hot guys,
yeah,
and
yeah. Gay men love me a lot. Yeah.
yeah, and, unfortunately, and here's what I feel about, like, wrestling, because I used to wanna be a wrestler,
Like
and
which
now
kind?
there's
Like the professional, like WWE wrestler,
yeah,
or
WWE, the
WWF,
stuff
right? Back in the day.
I I wanted to do the acrobatic stuff, because I am not a physical person at all.
Mm.
Like, when I say acrobatic, I'm sorry, I'm thinking choreography. I wanted to get set up.
You wanted to do what?
Like, something that will keep me safe, like something, because yeah,
Oh, wrestling's not safe. I know those guys are
I know it's
fucking
not, and
terrible.
seeing, like, the debates about, sports and stuff, I can understand.
Yeah. Where do you lie
With
on that, on the
On the
sports?
high school one? Oh
I
gosh,
guess in general,
that's a
like
tough one.
competitive sports, like how do you feel? See, this is the thing though, too, because like a lot of times the conversations focus around trans women, and it's not really
Yeah.
focused around trans men. That's the interesting thing. How do you feel about both? I guess we can start like, how do you feel about trans men competing with like cis men in sports, like competitively? Because non-competitively, I don't really care, but
I, think that it would depend on the sport, because, I think golf is pretty universal, but when you think of things like, football,
mhm.
I mean, we had a football movie once upon a time, and then, if but then my example, if I went into wrestling knowing that I couldn't fully transition, I am not gonna beat The Rock. It is not gonna happen. So, that would not be realistic, at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How do you feel about I mean, you don't have to answer, but how do you feel about trans women in sports? Like, do you feel like there's like how do you feel about that? Like, what's your opinion on that? And if you don't have one, you don't have to.
I don't think they're threatening, um yeah, I'm not sure. I have to play with that one, because there's multiple issues with that. You talk about physique, but there are some trans women that do pass enough.
Mhm.
and have the same whatever, because they've been. But this is also high school, right? Like it also.
I mean, I was just talking about like general competitive sports, like in general. I think that for me personally, like when we look at the data, like it seems that trans women who go through a male puberty that tend to have a physical advantage that maintains itself even if they go on drugs or they start going
Yeah.
hormones. It's the individuals who may not go through a puberty that's where it's like, okay, maybe like who cares? Maybe they should be able to compete. Like it doesn't seem like there's any biological advantage
Right.
there, and that's like the general argument. Well, that's my argument because I don't think it's a general argument. I think most people who don't want women to compete or trans women to compete in sports are just transphobic, and they just happen to like have, they're always going to be anti-trans. It doesn't matter what the fuck they're talking about, and at this
Yeah.
point, they just happen to have some factual information that supports what they think. You know what I mean?
And that information does tend to fog a lot of people because as somebody that likes sports, I'm like, I get it, but at the same time, who cares?
Mhm.
Because you think of wrestlers like China.
Mhm.
China wrestled with the best of the big guys,
Yeah,
and
I think though that
if
that's
she
like,
exists, so can anybody else.
well, I think in that sphere only like I can like professional wrestling is
It's
scripted.
different.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
scripted. So like, they could, it's a little bit different because there's not necessarily like a competitive thing there too much. I mean, people could show off their talents, but
yeah.
it's more about, I guess, people like you and your showmanship and whatnot. So
But I do feel that people should just participate, especially when it comes to high school. I
mhm.
mean, that is supposed to be where inclusivity is supposed to be more taught.
Mhm.
And how could it be when a school district doesn't?
Yeah, I get that. I think that the argument there for high school is like it's starting to get competitive in high school, and that's where you're starting to kind of fight for potential scholarships for college, and then that could take you and carry you on. And there's a conversation about, other,
Scholarships,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and
that
that's
does
where it
make
gets like really
sense.
complicated because it makes perfect sense to let people play sports from a community aspect, from like a health
Mhm.
aspect. I mean, that's a big thing. But then things get so competitive, even in high school, like it's crazy. They start scouting you very early. I think like when you're like 16 is when they start to really go for it, and it gets, there's like the monetary aspect there, so it becomes like
Yeah,
a whole different fucking ball game. It's crazy.
and
Thank,
sports has its own community rules too, I bet.
yeah, I'm
It's
sure.
like
I'm sure.
Hollywood.
Yeah, right. Okay. If you have anything else you want to bring up, let me know.
No,
But
I just wanted to confuse your viewers and say hello and give you some information because I've been enjoying your chat. And I actually respond to your videos as I watch them.
oh,
I'm
do
like
you?
talking at them. So I feel that this was very productive.
See, you might as well make a, at this point, you might as well get paid to do it. Make a commentary channel, you know what I mean?
If I
Uh,
did that, you'd be one of the first channels that I would present.
hey, there you go. I appreciate that. That'd be
Yeah,
great. I really appreciate you stopping by. It was interesting. It was informative. I really enjoy these conversations. They give me like a lot more insight on things.
excellent.
So thank you so
Hey, I
much.
like to pay it forward. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate you hanging out in the chat. I'm happy that my chat's not a bunch of pieces of shit to you. So there you
Yeah, they're
go.
lovely people. I love them.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right.
Hopefully they do too. And if they don't, they fuck them. All right.
All right.
Take
Bye,
care. Right.
Bubba.
Bye. Bye. All right, that was cool. I enjoyed that conversation. That was pretty cool. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And another special shout out to all my Patreon and Twitch subs. If you'd like to support this channel further than you already have by just watching the video alone, go down to the links below where you can sub on my Patreon, which will allow you to get your name on this beautiful black wall. Or you can go to the Twitch page and you can actually use a free Amazon Prime sub, if you have Amazon Prime, to subscribe. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.